Hey everyone, I'm Rob Scott from UC Today and welcome to our September 2021 Microsoft Teams news update. So as always, I'm joined by Microsoft Teams expert and MVP Tom Arbuthnot. Tom, how are you today?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, good to have you back. We had Tom last month, but now you're back in the driving seat.
Back in the seat, yeah. So thanks for joining Tom last month, but yeah, you've got me back unfortunately. But anyway, it's September. Summer is starting to fade. Lots of things happening, but seems like a little bit of a summer slump on UC Today in terms of news from some of the big brands.
Yeah, usually August is quiet, isn't it? Because you're kind of wrapping that up and September starts to ramp. But yeah, surprisingly, some quite big Microsoft news did drop. Maybe it dropped in August because it was August. They were trying to drop it at that point, so we'll talk about that. But yeah, definitely some interesting things on the Microsoft front.
Yeah, maybe that was tactical. Yeah, drop it when it's quiet. Yeah,
quite possibly. You don't not much is accidental when it comes to announcements. So you could say that.
Absolutely. So we've got a bit of an update today. Let's go through the news then. So first of all, Tom, what's top of your list this month?
Yeah, so absolutely top is there's a price increase for Microsoft 365, and they haven't really made any big price increases in the past, despite adding features and features and features. So Microsoft put this announcement out saying, hey, we've got all these features in our suites, and it's about time to do an incremental price rise. So that's quite interesting, and we can talk through the price rise, but it's a couple of dollars on all the major SKUs, really, basically. But also in that announcement, they announced that they're going to include unlimited dial-in conferencing on all the enterprise, business, frontline, and government plans. So in the UC space, that's huge news, because that means a whole lot of people that have Microsoft 365, even the lower SKUs, are now going to get PSTN dial-in conferencing with Teams included in their SKU rather than having to buy it as an add-on.
So that could be potentially quite a big saving for companies using that particular feature.
Yeah, it's $4 per user per month list for that add-on to go from Teams to Teams PSTN conferencing. So some of the increases kind of make that a wash. So if you had E3, which is the most common license before, that goes from $20 list per user per month to $23. But if you were a customer that had E3 plus conferencing, you're now saving $1. All these are lists. Everybody negotiates their prices a little bit. But what's I think most interesting is lots of people having to do something to get PSTN conferencing was just another little friction blocker. Like, which license do I get? How do I apply it? All that stuff. Whereas now you sign up for those SKUs, just you create a meeting, it's going to have PSTN dial in, dial out on it, which I think is I've certainly seen customers that have just gone and bought another platform because they needed PSTN conferencing. They thought that's what they had to do. I need dial-in. I'll go buy WebEx or Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever, because they think they're buying that feature with PSTN. So I think it'll be interesting to see as customers see that turn up. Will that be a competitive situation where they're like, oh, Microsoft does it, I didn't even know that. Well, there it is. Yeah,
so I can see that in a decision-making process where if there's a cost to conferencing, then you might put that out to tender. You might look at other providers, but if there's no cost to conferencing, then that discussion's off the table.
And obviously it was announced at the same time as a price increase. So if I was putting sitting on the other side of the fence, I'd be like, well, they've bundled it in and they've increased the price. So there's that conversation.
Got it.
But I mean, Microsoft haven't done a price increase in a long time. I haven't seen huge kickbacks on it. It is a lot of money though. When they announce these per user per month, it's very easy. I think all humans kind of it's like, oh, it's a couple of dollars. Like, yeah, it's a couple of dollars per user per month. Like, do the maths quickly on thousands or tens of thousands of seats. It really starts to add up.
Great stuff. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? So watch out for that, people. Price increases are ahoy. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, and if you're a customer with add-on conferencing right now, start looking at what the timelines are for that, when your renewals are, when your contract dates are, because you should be getting that included. So there should be a point in time where you can drop that additional license.
Yeah, absolutely. Good tip. Great stuff. Okay, next up we said we'd talk about Uber. Ooh, what's Uber got to do with Microsoft Teams, I wonder? Tell us more.
Yeah, this is super interesting. we were just talking this pre-record. So Microsoft have hired a former Uber exec to take over to become VP of the Teams consumer business. So Teams for end users rather than Teams for business. And he's actually going to be, let me get this right. So he's VP of Teams consumer, Skype, and GroupMe. GroupMe is a smaller product that they bought and didn't really do much with in the Skype family. So this is interesting because this is them putting some real firepower behind Teams consumer.
And this is Manik Gupta, is that correct?
That's right, yeah, Manik Gupta. So he was previously at Uber. He was chief product officer at Uber. And obviously Uber's had that insane viral consumer growth. So you can see why Microsoft are interested. That's very clearly what they want for Teams in the consumer space.
Yeah, so this seems a real kind of priority then, therefore, for Microsoft to make a success of the consumer product. But, they have already got success with Skype, haven't they? So I'm slightly confused, what's happening.
Depends how you define success, I guess. Skype has a lot of users. I don't see a lot in my life anymore, but it still has a very big user base, maybe surprisingly to some people. But what it isn't the new world messaging of like WhatsApp or Signal or any of that kind of group messaging model, which what Teams kind of is, or a big part of Teams is. And I think Microsoft really want to grab some of that. And as WhatsApp is not getting great press around Facebook and all the privacy concerns, that Apple is like trebling down on privacy. It seems like a good space for Microsoft, but they've always struggled, with the exception of Xbox, which is obviously huge. Like, consumer market has not been their strong point. So he's got a lot to do. And also what the messaging around, where does Skype fit? Where does Kozala fit? Because that's still knocking around. Yep. What's happening with Teams on consumer devices? Because at the moment you can get Teams on mobile, but you can't get Teams on your Amazon Echo or on your TV, but you can get Skype on those devices. So there's a lot of mishmash conversation around where Teams fits in the consumer world. Hopefully we'll see him get a hold of that, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Yeah,
and we're likely to see, I suppose, an uptick in consumer adoption when Windows 11 is kind of mass deployed, I suppose, because is it right? Am I right? It's going to be bundled.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we do. Tom and I talked about that briefly last month, but it's going to be bundled into Windows Home, so not the enterprise product, but the home product, and tightly integrated. Teams will literally be on the taskbar. I tried to do some maths in that on a blog post about how many Windows Home users there are. They'll auto be signing in with a live ID. A Microsoft account is the consumer account name. So Windows Home will only sign in with a Microsoft account. You can't have a local non-Microsoft account. But potentially, that gives it a really big boost because it makes it front and center for a whole lot of people. You buy, and probably most consumers will buy a new machine. They won't upgrade necessarily. They'll buy a new laptop and Teams will just be there. So that's certainly an interesting advantage they have over other platforms.
Yeah, it certainly is interesting. I still wonder whether they're going to have a challenge, or they currently have a challenge with the branding of Teams in the kind of consumer space. Because when I think Teams, I think business, and a lot of people like to draw a line between business and home life, although that's blurred somewhat in the past year. But Teams, I don't associate. I never call my family Teams. I never call my friends Teams.
Yeah.
It just feels like they may need to have a consumer brand out there.
I think the same thing. And at the moment, you can switch the single app between kind of your consumer profile and your enterprise profile. And then they push that as a benefit, like one app that does both. But yeah, if I was Manik, and I'm not, so I don't get to make this decision, but I would have a different consumer app, maybe this powered by Teams or the same brand even, but so that mentally I can have an app that I go to for my personal stuff, my community groups, my hobbies, and a different app I go to for my work stuff. Because there's, especially as you say, in the modern age, there's this whole work-life balance thing. If you're in the app that's also your work app, even in a different profile, you're tempted to go back to work or see what's going on. So I like that app level separation. But I also think it's interesting on the devices space. If you're consumer, you have to be everywhere. But if you put Teams consumer on consumer devices, can I use that as a business device now? Or does it have to be a certified business device? There's these weird lines that need to be drawn.
Yeah. Yeah, or do they need to be drawn?
Well, yeah,
I suppose
it's just one
that's
big
the
thing.
argument, isn't it? Are we just getting rid of the lines, and blowing the whole thing? But that's going to take time, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
interesting, great. Okay, let's go on to the next one, because the next one's equally interesting. We said we'd talk about SharePoint Server. Tell us more.
Yeah, so talking about SharePoint on the Microsoft Teams show might seem odd, but SharePoint just gave a preview of the subscription edition of their server product. And this is the way all Microsoft server products are going. So SharePoint and also Skype for Business and also Exchange are the big server products. So they're moving to a model where you'll have to pay for them on a subscription, even though you're buying the software and installing it yourself. It will be a subscription model just like Office 365 is. So we got to learn it will be on the latest version of Microsoft Server. It will be TLS 1.3. It will have an upgrade path from the last two versions of SharePoint, 2016 and 2019. And why this is interesting for me and for us is this is showing us probably what's going to come for Skype Business Server v next. There's still lots of Skype Business Server out there, surprisingly, like way less than there was pre-COVID, but still lots out there. And if there are customers that, for whatever business reason or technical reason, want to stay on a isolated server platform, so maybe they're like they have some governmental regulation that they want to be completely air-gapped from the internet, for example, that would be Skype Server. They're still going to have to move to this subscription model, and it feels like from the announcement, Microsoft are pushing for like sort of a auto-updating, we patch it for you type model. It's not very clear yet, but they're clearly trying to get a reason for you to be on the subscription is we take care of some of that pain for you.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. It's kind of what's in it for the IT guy here. So, for the finance manager or director, it's something else moving to a monthly payment, and they can get their head around that, I'm sure. But from an admin point of view, a lot of organisations still have servers that are completely air-gapped, to the internet, aren't they, and whatnot. So, how's that?
Yeah, this is definitely primarily commercially motivated. Like Wall Street likes subscriptions and nice plannable models. You want to convert those customers, and also, really, Microsoft wants you on Teams, not Skype. Well, I think they'll say as much. Like, it's a very reluctant. Okay, Skype still exists for those customers, but at least if they get you on subscription, you're commercially in the mindset of continuously paying. Now you're like, oh, well, now flipping from from Skype to Teams is just a technical conversation. It's not a commercial one anymore. But it'd be interesting to see how it's received by some of those hardcore server customers, because it is a very different model to Microsoft of the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that becoming an issue for some organisations, certainly. And
definitely, if they haven't planned for it and they're used to that, big spend every 3 years, maintain the servers, get rid of the hardware again, another big spend. Yeah. Like that, this will flip that model for sure.
The last of a dying breed of capex purchases in the IT world.
Yeah.
Okay, great stuff. We said we'd talk about Teams panels next. Tell us more on that.
Yeah, a bit of hardware news. I think this was quite cool. So Teams panels have been around for a while. They are the outside of room kind of screens / presence devices that show you if a meeting room's available. You can book it right on the panel. They're fairly basic in their functionality. What Microsoft have just unlocked makes them much more interesting. You can now run your own line of business apps on them. So you could push out announcements to the screen. For example, say you've got COVID rules, you might have an app that explains what the rules of the meeting room are. You might have an app that controls the room or the Crestron type, meeting room controls, blinds, all that kind of stuff. Maybe an app for, I've seen customers have conversations around kind of concierge service. You go into some of the more flash businesses, they often have an ability to, press a button for tea and biscuits and all that fancy stuff. Like all of that ability, now you can potentially take into these panels, which is interesting.
So how does that work then, Tom? Is there an app marketplace that, companies are developing apps for these Microsoft panels? How does that kind of all integrate?
Yeah, so it's just the same Teams app marketplace that there always was. So actually it's a Teams endpoint. This is one of the benefits, I guess, of being a Teams endpoint is there's already an app store in play there and a model. There'll just be apps that are tailored to that screen type. You can already push them out now. The app version you need for the panels is rolling out now, so you need to make sure you've got the right version. But yeah, you put it in the normal app store, download it, and you can kind of pin it to that screen.
And if you're an organisation that maybe wants, got a custom app, for example, and want to push that to a panel, is that possible?
Yep, 100%. Yeah. So you could have your own in-house app with, say, your floor layout, your logos, buttons about the different rooms. Like you can do anything you want to do. So I think you'll see a lot of the vendors, like Crestron's going to be the classic because they have all that room control stuff. But other vendors will come up with systems. Any kind of there's quite a few third-party room booking systems that add on abilities like to book kits, to book food, to book lunch, that kind of thing. So I think you'll see some of those having apps on the panels as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's just that's really cool. Okay, so in terms of the news, that is about it for today. However, we want to plug a couple of events going on. So, Tom, what's the top event coming up next?
Yeah, so next is Commsverse, and as you listen to this podcast, which will be coming out start of September, this event is September 15th and 16th. It is in person and online. In person, it's in Weybridge, Surrey, Mercedes-Benz World, which is a really cool venue. I've done a few things there, but also online. So for everybody listening, if you're not going to make it in person, you can still register and see the sessions online as well.
Great. So this is a hybrid event. You can you can attend, or you can just watch it from your armchair in your home. But I'll be there. Tom, you'll be there.
Yep, yeah, I'll be there. I'm doing a session on contact centres, which has suddenly got a lot more heat considering the Zoom 5.9 news. Everybody's super interested in the contact centre team space. So I'll be going over all your kind of partner contact centre options and considerations. And the event itself is split into 2 days. One's more around the collaboration and one's more around the kind of techie config. So there's something for everybody there, business kind of track and more techie stuff as well.
Superb. And I know Mark at Commsverse and the team are putting a huge amount of effort into this event. So they'd love your support. If you've not signed up to the event and got your ticket, do get to the event. It's going to be one to remember, I think, because this is their actual debut in-person event, isn't it? Because last year they got cancelled by the dreaded.
That's it. It went all virtual at the relative last minute last year, and they had a really good turnout on the virtual stuff. But yeah, this will be the inaugural in person, which is always what they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
As you say, they definitely need a lot of support. It's been a hard time to do an event, but fortunately they've got some great sponsors and great, they've really vetted the speakers very hard as well. I managed to get through, fortunately, but they've been quite good on speakers around. Has to be real world, has to be technical, no fluff. So it's going to be good sessions. Yeah,
no fluff, good stuff. And it's as you said, it's an awesome venue. It's at the the Mercedes World venue, isn't it? So if you can get there, I know Commsverse are putting on a number of fun things to do as well to enjoy your visit. So great time out of the office if you can get there, or time out of the home office. 15th and 16th of September. Okay, we got one more event to plug, haven't we? What's that?
Yeah, then the big one, UC Expo. So UC Expo's back 6th and 7th of October at Excel London. So this is a combination of what we used to call UC Expo and Digital Transformation Expo as one big event. Everyone, I think, still calls it. Everyone in my space still calls it UC Expo. Just a real big event. All the big vendors are there. And it's a good opportunity. This is kind of a cross-vendor event, so it's not just Microsoft. I'm fortunate to be pretty involved in the Microsoft stage and some of the Microsoft sessions. I know we're doing some cool stuff around there, but this gives you a whole view of the entire industry and lots of conversation around hybrid working, new ways of working, all the stuff that the enterprises are talking about around how do we deal with 2022 forward. That's kind of the topic of conversation there. Yeah,
as you say, all the experts in one place in London on the 6th and 7th of October. And UC Today News will equally be there to pick up the news and the conversation from the event as well. So, really looking forward to actually just getting out to a couple of live events this year at least. So, superb. I think that's about it from us today, Tom.
Yep, that's it for September. So things will be ramping, events will be happening. So we'll be back next month with all the latest news. But for now, that's it. If anybody's got any questions or anything we missed or any comments, feel free to hit us on the socials, and I'd love to engage there. Yeah, absolutely. So if you've enjoyed today's news update, please subscribe to UC Today News and give this video a quick share on social. It's always appreciated.
And if you're a Microsoft Teams fan and want to be part of the conversation, you can join Tom and myself on LinkedIn and Twitter, and our social links are in the description. So we'll be back again next month with more Microsoft Teams news. Thanks for watching.